Here comes the queer cackle. I like it thick. It's got to be thick. Make it, and then everybody's going, get the altar thick. We need a thick altar. That's so fantastic. That's us not having to shame our queerness and being able to create a sacred altar at the same time.
Hello, beloved listeners. This is Adrienne Marie Brown, writer of stories and songs, emergent strategist, and pleasure activist, living in the land of the Shakori, Spirure, Tuscarora, Eno, and Lumbee peoples. And this is How to Survive the End of the World, our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity. When I say our, of course, I'm including my co-host and sister Autumn, who is currently on sabbatical. Hope you're having fun, Autumn. In her absence, and in honor of my book, Fables and Spells, which came out last year, I'm going full witch this season and having conversations with some of my favorite witches, and I will also read you bits and pieces from the book. What I mean by witch is people who work with all elements of the natural world, including human nature, to generate more possibilities. Witching is engaging the essential natural world with magic or supernatural intentions, but some names for what I'm including in the witch work might not be ones you normally think of that way. So I'm including shamanism, sorcery, seeing, healing, herbalism, midwifery and doula labor, root work, conjuring, ritual and spell casting, astrology and divination, sound baths, altar building, song channeling, all kinds of ways of building a direct relationship with the realm of the spirit, the ethereal, and us here on Earth. My guest today is someone who I would describe as like one of the baddest bitches I know. One of the most incredible humans I know, and someone who I've really looked up to for a very long time. I remember meeting Sara Flores, gosh, a long time ago. Let's just say that. We were bebés. And I remember immediately being like, wow, Sara knows things. They really seem to know some things about this world intuitively that I'm struggling to understand or struggling to learn. At the time, Sara was a nurse and in the process of learning everything about nursing, but also on a path towards midwifery. And I think at that time you were doing it in doula work, but you were on the path towards midwifery, if it's what I'm thinking of. Since then, Sara has founded something called Reclaim Midwifery and is basically a queer icon. And I want to say that when I invited Sara on the show, they were immediately like, I don't really think of myself as a witch, but I will come and talk to you about this. And that made me very excited because I was like, absolutely, that these are the kind of conversations I want to have, actually. So Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Adrienne. It is truly a pleasure to be in this conversation with you.
I'm so excited you're here. And I hope that it is a conversation that is in service to everything that you're here on Earth to do, in addition to my curiosity. So the first thing I always love to ask people is just, how are you today?
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I am really relaxed today. I spent yesterday soaking in hot springs and had just a wonderful experience. I'm joining you from Occupied Huichin territory, Bay Area, California. And I had the privilege of being in hot springs that, flourish here on the West Coast. So today I'm really in my body, relaxed. The sun is shining where I'm at, and I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Oh my gosh. As soon as you say hot springs, it's like a somatic response in my body of remembering what that feels like to be immersed in. That's very helpful for me right now. I know that I'm coming into this season and into the conversation using the language of witch, and I'm also trying to use it in a very open way. I'm thinking about the work that you do as a midwife and a doula, and how for a long time in our history, there's been a lot of overlap in those realms of work. But I wanted to ask you how you identify the various kinds of work that you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And, indeed, you're right. When you reached out and I shared that I didn't identify as a witch, I thought it really opened something for us of like, well, let's
Hmm.
explore this together.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time that I've either been kind of asked, do I identify as a witch, or assumed that I did, which I take as
Yeah.
a high compliment. It's nothing to be
Yeah.
offended by in my
Yeah. It's a way
spirit.
that I say, like, oh, you're powerful. What's up?
And I love
Yep.
that. I really, really
Yeah.
love that. And I would say that I feel like there is a very clear thread between all of the healing modalities or arts that you opened up with describing, from Reiki to body work to midwifery to areas that sometimes don't really get as much intention around uplifting as healing arts, like food preparation, farming, um,
Yes.
braiding hair, and doing, different types of body adornment, like tattoo artists. Like the range
Yeah.
is really wide in my understanding of what can bring in intentional healing, intentional divination to someone's life. So to
Mm.
me, witch work can have a lot of different names, as you mentioned, but
Hmm.
the theme is that there is presencing. One
Ah.
brings their presence to the moment and calls on all of the energies that they have access to, whether that's through the
Mm.
natural world, that's through ways of knowing about their body, like knowing how to steady their breath, their heartbeat, the laying on of hands, more
Yes.
more technical hand skills, like things that
Yeah.
I do with my hands as a midwife, or things that a jewelry maker might do with their hands to make a powerful totem to wear.
Yeah.
But there's a presencing that brings in a certain energy, and a real teaching brought to me by one of my herbalist teachers that I carry with me always. That teacher is Atava Garcia Swaziki, and she's an herbalist and a two-spirit queer young elder, and the foundress of Ancestral Apothecary and Seisei Mana herbalist school. And
Mm.
one of her teachers shared with her, where intention flows, energy goes.
Hmm.
And she shared that with me. And sometimes I play with the words, where energy goes, intention flows, where intention goes, energy flows. You can dance with it, but it's a presencing. If I bring my energy and intention to a moment and my full presence there and draw on everything I have access to,
Yes.
whatever I put that intention into is going to be very powerful, actually. I believe that. And I believe that for you. I believe that for all the
Yeah.
listeners. So,
Yeah.
that to me is how I bring in a sacred healing art to what I do, which also could be called being a witch. I would use terms more like brujex or curanderex,
Yes.
and midwife or parterex. And for those who are hearing, the Spanish and what I'm saying, bruja or brujo, those are Spanish words for witch.
Yeah.
And partera is the Spanish word for midwife. And curandero is a Spanish word for healer. And intentionally, I'm queering that language and I'm
Yeah.
putting an X at the end, taking away the binary of masculine or feminine in that language, because my lineage is very queer. So I identify more with those terms for what could be called witch. But regardless, it's about bringing presencing and setting intention and allowing the energy to flow that way.
I love that. I love that also because I keep thinking about how there's these formal paths and informal paths into this journey. And for so many of us, there was the first step in some way was a calling to, like, wait, there's something else that happens when I'm truly present. There's something that moves through me, and that I want to even be more present for and more available to, that changes the conditions of what can happen. where I am and in the world, and trying to figure out, what do I do with that? Is it a superpower? Is it, just, yeah, is it something that I can use to heal? Is it something I can use to change the world? Is it something I can use to heal myself? So I'm curious for you, when did you first realize that you were drawn to this presencing work?
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate the question. And it was something that I enjoyed reflecting on because this part of me is as old as I am. And in fact, it extends before I was in this body. I will say though, for sure, I know it's as old as I am in this body. I'm going on 46. And I can recall as a child being in my mother's garden in Detroit, Michigan, where I was raised, occupied Anishinaabe. Hey, what up, though? 313 in the house.
Always.
Can't not shout out Detroit, always.
I'm still holding on to my phone numbers.
Absolutely.
I'm like, it's 313.
That's identity right there. And for the Detroiters tuning in, and folks familiar with the area, I was raised in Northwest Detroit on the corner of Joy. Like I was raised on a street called Stout, if you know Stout, a block off of Joy and Evergreen. And it was hot. The neighborhood was hot. And I was born in 1977. So my childhood was the early 80s in Detroit. And there was such a intentional impact of police terrorism in my neighborhood. And that presence of police terrorism was a backdrop to my mother's garden. And my mother's garden was an antidote to the food desert that we didn't have that language, but was the truth of the upbringing in Detroit, which was like, if you want some veggies, you're going to have to drive to a whole nother city really to get any fresh fruits and vegetables, because the grocery store on the corner, Farmer Jack's, doesn't really have anything fresh. And I would be in that garden that my mother created. And my father helped sometimes too with like rototilling and things like that. But it was really my mom's garden. And the magic of working with those plants while literally shit's popping off all around me on every corner. And I mean, real things that were putting my life at risk at times. But I could go deep into picking these red berries from the bushes in the garden, or making some magic potion at 3 or 4 with a variety of plants from her garden that I didn't know the names of. And she didn't teach it to me that way. And they probably weren't even always medicinal. It'd be like, the leaves off of like some, thing that was growing, and I didn't eat them or consume them. I did have a sense.
I'm making potions,
but I'm making potions,
right?
And it transported me into a way of being in a safe imaginary land as a young child, a safe place where I felt I had power and agency and could be a helper to those around me. And that really, honestly, just easily translated into becoming a helper in my family for the sick members of my family. Yes. It was a very easy translation from, this is, my magic potion that I just made, to, oh, my Nana has Parkinson's disease and it has difficulty with swallowing. And I can make her a cup of tea at the age of 8, 9, 10. And I can bring it to her with that same presencing, that good intention, that feeling of, I love you, and I'm going to bring you something to help you. And I'm going to receive too, because it's mutual when you let that energy flow. Yeah. And I could just keep going. Like, there are just so many stories that built from those early days of plant medicine as my introduction, that then turned into crystals as a teenager, that then turned into what now I understand as sacred kink as a young 20, 30-year-old, and understanding that there was healing energy in sexual interactions that were beyond what I was understanding, was being fed to
Yep.
me by popular culture about what sex was.
You're like, it's not just penetration. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
beyond that. And then all the way into my midwifery to today, and the way I carry my medicine. So it's in my bones and has never been separate from my identity.
That it makes so much sense given how you feel, the solidity of how you feel. It makes so much sense to have that be your answer about this trajectory. And something you just said gave me a flicker of hope. I've been feeling very overwhelmed and hopeless by the mass shootings that have been happening and the level of random but not random violence that's been happening. And it helps to remember that there are so many who have lived through war zones in this country, that, whether they're named or unnamed war zones, but, you know, times and periods where gun violence in particular was really heightened and other forms of violence were really heightened and normalized, and that there is a solution beyond policy, right? When you're like, okay, no one is doing what they need to do at the level of governance. And then here you are as a child being able to generate a space of safety in your mother's garden. And that, I don't know, there's just something about that juxtaposition of being like, don't stop growing, don't stop turning to the earth. And it makes me think like, how was the earth a part of that protection? That it's like, there's some field that gets created when you are in direct touch with the land. I can almost see you as a little 3-year-old with this garden safety bubble around you. And I'm so grateful that your mom did that.
Thank you.
Gardening work.
If I may, just to follow up on the thread of gun violence, it just is coming to me that I don't want to miss this moment to speak to this, because not only was that my experience as a young child, but I also lived through a school shooting before we had this understanding of like mass school shootings. But in Tucson, Arizona, where I went to nursing school in 2002, I believe, there was a school shooting at my college, and 3 of my professors. So activation warning, folks, as we're talking about this,
Thank you.
And 3 of my professors were killed, and the shooter also was killed. And I, along with my classmates, fled that building and ran for our lives. And my life was spared, as well as, many of our classmates, but some were lost. And I am bringing it up because you brought this really important piece up, that the teachings I have taught me to go back to that campus later and call my spirit back into my body, to go get myself back. And go put down medicine on the earth. In my case, the teachings were specific medicines, and go call my name to bring myself back to my body.
Wow.
And then be able to move forward in a way that still involved grief, that still involved fear, that still involved the body memories, but to be integrated back into my spirit. Because when we have these really very scary moments, including the loss of a friend like you've just gone through, it is really natural, I think, for us to dissociate or go into these spaces where we don't know how to hold it all at once. And so a part of what we're talking about, these medicine ways, these healing ways, I hope this is helpful for you or someone else. And I know it's been helpful for me, that we can actually, we don't always have to call a healer, always have to go find a witch, always have to go find a curanderex. We don't have to go study. We first have to call ourselves back, because the medicine can't even get to us if we're not in our bodies, if we're not occupying our bodies. So I just want to share that while those have been really difficult moments for myself and anybody else who's lived through those, and that to me is a key part of what I think we're talking about with brujeria, or
Yes,
witchcraft, or healing arts, or midwifery. For me, is that we carry the medicine inside of ourselves. In
literally.
fact, we
Yes,
are the medicine. And
yes.
so the first thing we have to do is make sure we can be integrated in our bodies so that we can have presencing.
Yeah. I want folks to know every time I talk to Sara, there's what I intended to do. There's like, I want to ask you this. And then there's what happens because the power of your presence. And there's a dance that always takes me into new realms. I always learn. And I think that's part of your magic as well. Um, so there was something else you said before we move on. You talked about the kink and the way that kink opened up as a sacred space. You're one of the people who I feel like, in the most wholesome way, carry sex up front in who you are,
Mm,
right? Do you feel like that has been an intentional thing, or is that also just like, that's just who I am? That's just how I am? Or does it feel, because I feel like similarly, I went through phases where I was like, I'm wilding out, and that's fun, and like claiming all my sexual capacities, and that's fun. But I feel like something new has been happening where I'm like, oh, I'm really claiming the sacred power of this and trying to forward it in every conversation I enter, trying to forward into how people, I'm like, part of my power is the pleasure I experience in this body and the way I negotiate that with
yes.
others. Yeah, I'm just curious if there's any more there that you want to share.
Yeah, sure. I love that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing where you're at on the journey. This is not just how I woke up. No, I definitely have this has been work, and is a continued practice of work. Because I am queer, I'm non-binary, trans fit
Mm.
sometimes, indigiqueer,
Mm-hmm.
two-spirit, and I've always been this way. And therefore, I've also been, I'm a survivor of targeted
Yeah.
violence towards my body, that has been certainly physical in nature at times, but almost always with a
Mm-hmm.
sexual component. And so to own my sensuality and sexuality is work
Yes.
and a practice. And it's almost like a wrestling it back out of the hands of those who would have either, malintentions straight up, like the homophobes, the transphobes,
Yes. Yeah.
the, patriarchy, the white supremacists. Like, certainly I will wrestle that
Yeah.
back. But even within a queer, trans, BIPOC context, of like folks who would maybe be perceived to have my best intentions in mind, and vice versa, but we carry quite a bit of we've got some wounds in our
Oh,
communities.
yeah.
And so we have to be intentional, I think, about owning and caretaking our own sensual and sexual practices
Mm.
with healthy, disciplined boundaries that are about meeting one another from a place of wholeness
Yes.
versus seeking wholeness through the validation of someone else.
Yes.
So this is a daily practice,
Yes, baby.
and it's going to continue to be so.
Yeah.
And I hope, because I have the privilege of being a parent, I hope that much of the work that I do with myself this lifetime can have the opportunity of passing to my daughter a different narrative about
Mm.
her body and her story. So I take it really seriously, and I appreciate you uplifting that you witnessed that in me.
Yeah.
And I have to put in daily practice.
I love that. I really love that. I feel like, there's times when you've told me about experiences you're having as a midwife or other things where it's like helping people remember, like, you're in a body and this can be a pleasurable thing. This could be, that might help you, and just being like, oh, right. For me as a young doula, being like, that's part of my work, is to continuously bring people back into themselves and to rethink what this strong feeling could even be,
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have a long queer lineage, and I wanted to ask you to just give a little bit more light on that. Like, who would you call the ancestors of this presencing work, this brujeria? And is there a formal lineage to the way you do your work? Has it been mostly gathered and informal, somewhere in between? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I love to talk about this lineage because I'm so proud to be part of the arc of queer, trans, non-binary, gender expansive, indigenous folks who carry forward the seed that our ancestors planted and had to protect so that we could actually survive and be alive now. There was a time that I believe very strongly that two-spirit, queer, gender expansive folks who are our ancestors were intentionally targeted as the very first line of genocide by colonial powers.
Uh-huh.
And I am on their shoulders.
Yes.
Some of them blood related, some of them not, but they are my transcestors. They are the lineage of two-spirit, queer healers, midwives, teachers, curanderos folks. And I feel them through my body at times telling me, go forward. You can do this with your queerness intact. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, I'll use the example of midwifery. I've been attending births and practicing midwifery and learning about midwifery for 25 years now. So I started really young. I got my calling to midwifery when I was 17. And so my whole life's work has been about midwifery. And in the early years of midwifery, I thought I had to perform as cisgender to be able to access the type of spaces that I knew I was called to be in. I was called to be a home birth midwife. I was called to be a community midwife. And I was called to be a midwife to BIPOC, marginalized folks.
Yeah.
Yet I thought that also meant I had to check my queerness at the door because I was concerned that if I was all those things, queer, BIPOC, home birth midwife, I couldn't survive, right? Those were true survival techniques. I felt like I had to choose. And the pandemic really helped me actually just let go of some of those ideas of how I had to silo out my identities and really marry back in all of my beautiful ways that I have in this world. And so I kind of came out in a way back into midwifery with like my non-binary identity, my trans identity, my two-spirit identity, much more upfront. I was always queer. I wasn't ever in the closet about that, but I was performing cis to pass and to survive. That's my queer ancestors. That's the transcestors telling me, in fact, being a queer midwife is an extra superpower. It's even extra special. It's even more hand skills that are divine because I am embodied in my hands as a queer person. And I can be present in my hands in a way that really serve me as a midwife, that are not a deficit, but in fact, a strength. So that's some of the ways that these ancestors that I don't have the names of come through, literally in my body saying, it's safe now. You've survived and gained access. You can now truly let go of any cis performance and really be fully integrated.
Yes.
And then I'm so fortunate that I have living teachers too. So I've got these ancestors who come through. And then I mentioned Atava Garcia Swaziki, who is a formal herbalist teacher. But because she teaches as a curanderos, it's beyond plant medicine as just like a Western way we think of it, as like formulas, or this plant is for that, or, this formula is going to help you with that. It's about relationships with plants, about relationships with earth, and relationships with self and spirit. So she's a really special teacher to me. I also feel like a real lineage I come from is a lineage of two-spirit Mexica danza, which some people call like Aztec dance. That's incorrect, but folks might know what it is if you call it Aztec dance, but it is not owned by the Aztecs, and it's not a correct term. But Mexica is much more of a general term for a specific type of indigenous peoples of the Americas, but also an umbrella term for indigenous peoples of the Americas who traveled throughout the Americas. And that is part of my lineage. That's amazing. And so I have teachers who are two-spirit danzantes who have taught me to dance and bring prayer through my body in movement with such a fantastic queer lens. Like, one of my favorite parts of setting up an altar in two-spirit danza is that this joke gets made every time. The joke is, we're setting up the altar, we're setting up the specific energies, which involve making like very symmetrical circles and symmetrical shapes to represent the different directions. And somebody will say, how's this line? And someone else will say, make it thicker. And then here comes the queer hackle. I like it thick. It's got to be thick. Make it, and then everybody's going, get the altar thick. We need a thick altar. That's so fantastic. That's us not having to shame our queerness and being able to create a sacred altar at the same time. So those are living people that I'm so honored to dance with. And then I'll just name two more because there's many, but Rahani Gonzalez, who is a medicine keeper, a two-spirit young elder. And during the pandemic, I was honored to be part of a group that they co-founded called the Circle of Sowers. I think you would be really interested in this. We gathered around Octavia Butler's work, Parables, and already. And we, for many, many weeks, gathered on Zoom in 2020 and saw ourselves as the seeds for the future of surviving the apocalypse, right? Here we are on this podcast having this conversation. And it was really through Rahani's teachings that I came to understand that our bodies are the sacred altar, that we carry the medicine on our bodies, because part of what we talked about were like our go bags and what we would take. And we talked about it from a disability justice lens, that not everybody can carry a big old backpack and like trek down the road. And so if you're used to needing all your crystals to pray and all the copal and all of the water and feathers and all of the different things that many of us have on our altar, how are you going to carry that? Because you also need water. And
I think about this all the time. I'm like, I need all my tarot decks and water.
Right. And so really through the teachings of Rahani, I came to understand that we are the medicine bag. We carry the medicine in our bodies. And I just want to shout out one more teacher because he's so important to me. My cousin, my primo, my just love, Trey Vasquez, who is also just such a special teacher in the way he carries his medicine so humbly and carries it with such a body wisdom as well. So I come from those queer lineages, both living and from the ancestral realm.
Hello, beloved survivors. This is Autumn. I'm emerging briefly from the new home I made for myself in the forest among the gnomes and the fae and magical creatures of all kind to remind you that if you listen to this show regularly, you might consider making a gift to support our work in 2024. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. Adrienne and I and our producer, Zach, have always felt strongly that we can best protect the content of our show by being listener-supported rather than ad-sponsored. Being financially supported by the people who are most directly impacted by our show means that we can fearlessly move towards the most difficult topics, the most challenging conversations, and the most courageous edges of the time we are living through. From our apocalypse survival episode on the right to arm and defend ourselves, which aired in the midst of the 2020 uprising, to our 2023 ceasefire episode on the genocide being perpetrated on the Palestinian people in Gaza, we have maintained our show as a place to hold out visionary possibility with our eyes trained on liberation for all oppressed peoples. That's because we aren't worried about being dropped or canceled. We know that the people who most need to hear us can and will hear us, and that's because of you. So we want to thank you, all of you, who support our show in all of the myriad ways that you do it. And we want to invite those of you who haven't yet to consider making a sustaining gift via Patreon. In exchange, you do get some sweet, cute merch, plus access to content that we record only for patrons. So you can go to patreon.com/endoftheworldshow to learn more. And if you're wondering if I'm coming back, I'm coming back. Removing the binary from so much of the language is helps it to align with who we are and what we're doing. And then there's the word midwife, which is, like I dance with, I'm just like, I know that this is the field. Doula also, these languages, I remember at some point I was in my doula journey and someone was like, that means slave. And I was like, I know that that's one way of understanding it, and servant to a birthing parent is another, and then midwife is like, literally wife is in it. So I just wonder for you if there's any ways that you're like queering that language already for yourself, or if this is part of the, because of who you're in community with, it's like I imagine it's already a big deal when people are like, I'm getting a midwife. And then it's like, right, that might not be the place to be like, also, let's switch it up. But anyway, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Thank you. Oh yeah. No, I'm troubling those waters.
Yeah.
I have absolute, every reason to believe we need to unearth what's behind all of this.
Yes.
My sister, Ana Maria Flores, who also is somebody who not also, because I don't identify as a witch, but she identifies as a witch. So as far as in the family, also is in the healing arts. And she talks about language liberation. Mm-hmm. And in fact, she has created a witchy literary theory and has taught me a lot about how language locates you.
Yes.
And helps other people to locate you. Mm. And midwife and doula are location languages in so many ways.
Yes.
And really deserve to be uplifted for what they have to offer.
Yeah.
And questioned.
Yes.
For the baggage that they bring with them. And in addition to Reclaim being my midwifery practice, I also am honored to be the co-founder of Queerception.
Oh, yes.
And Courtney Hooks is my fellow midwife, and we are the founders of Queerception. And Queerception, is its own word play, right? The combination of the words queer and conception.
Yes.
And our work is about creating and expanding and nourishing queer families in principled and ethical ways.
Yes. And
we see Queerception as a compass to center queer and trans folks and intersex folks, non-binary folks, gender expansive folks as the central seat of authority in their own bodies and their own experience as to whether they choose to have children, choose not to, access abortion, raise their fur babies with support, make intentional families of origin with legal support amongst a group of polyamorous adults. Like the range is just really wide, but we are the authority as queer folks.
I love that.
And midwife has space in queerception because again, it's got a location. But the Latin root of the word, the mid is with, the wife, with is woman.
Mm-hmm.
So it translates to with woman.
Yeah.
And I've got some problems with that
Mm-hmm.
because not only women give birth,
Exactly.
right? And so that's why I like to be an agitator around the language, not the wife in the way we think of it in modern times, because this is Old English Latin. And so really knowing that there are a range of people who give birth who are way outside of woman. And so I really play with the idea that we're not in service to woman. The doula is not in service to the birthing person. We are companions to the energy that moves through people along the journey from womb to tomb.
Yes.
That may involve conception, may involve prevention, may involve a radical hysterectomy and gender affirming surgery.
Yes.
And that's who we're in service of.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not with woman. I'm in service of energy.
Yes.
I'm in service of this portal that I have the privilege and training to stand at and hold a container for. And I can't wait for some listener out there to go ahead and give us a new word.
Yes.
Because what is it? The young people are going to come with it. I'm positive. Somebody's going to say, what you mean is...
Period.
Fill it in. Fill it in.
That's great.
For now, I am proud of the work that it's taken to arrive at midwife because it has been work, and the colonial legacy would have already had midwifery lost and forgotten.
Yes.
If those of us who haven't struggled to keep it didn't keep saying midwives are essential.
Yes.
And I'm ready for that changeover in language and for the liberatory language that will be more expansive.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, every time I talk about it, I agitate and trouble and ask for input in a way that will help us grow together in an emancipatory way that I am almost positive will happen because of youth.
Yeah, no,
being
it
on
always
some
is.
next level.
It always is. They're like, I've got the next words, the next words for this next phase of our human development. You've shared with us a lot of the ways that you do your work, and I feel like it's very exciting. Is there anything else in there or anything you want to specify in terms of how you do your presencing work? You are doing your midwife work, you're working with queerception. Are there other things that you want folks to know about or specifics?
Yeah, thank you. I do think there's one more piece that is more about being a cultural worker, which is also an identity that I carry. That I really do want to be intentional about talking a little bit about the colonial legacy on our bodies. Reclaim, my midwifery practice, it's an acronym, and it stands for Resisting Colonial Legacy and Its Impact on Medicine. And so I really do appreciate the concept of Sankofa, right? Understanding where we came from to know where we're going. And I want to mention that there was very intentional othering of what could be called witches. I mean, specifically witches, like witch hunts and the genocide of people who were deemed to be witches throughout the world, but certainly here on Turtle Island, on what is now considered New England. And other places in the world have their own stories, and it's still happening in current times, where there's this othering of those who have, this magic or this ability to heal or this ability to see through portals or this ability to shape things in a way that are not visible to the naked eye.
Yes.
And I actually feel like that othering, which was very intentional and violent, And part of the colonial legacy that especially targeted queer and trans folks and two-spirit folks is still present very much today. And there's a continued othering of these arts, these healing ways, these modalities that some might call, brujariacs or other terms. But the othering is reverence. It's like, oh, the midwife is so revered. The person who is a healer is so revered. I have to see this particular root doctor because they're so revered. That is another form of othering.
Yep.
It's another way to say, oh, you're different. Yeah. And I'm not like you. You're not like me. And in fact, I need something from you.
Yes.
And I just want to uplift that all of the teachings I've really felt the most resonant with help me feel like I have the medicine bag that I need. And it's both a physical bag, but it's also just my spirit is being held by the medicine bag, which is my body. And there are times where you need somebody who's spent more time with a certain medicine in their medicine bag. Maybe they've studied the plant medicine longer. Maybe they've studied the dream world longer. Maybe they know how to work with certain energies because they've spent more time with it, but not because they're different.
Yeah. Okay.
Not because they're accessing something that everybody can't access.
Yeah.
If you look at children will be like, oh yeah, I'm magic. I know how to do magic. Totally, I'm a witch. I'm a wizard. Mm-hmm. I'm a warlock. That none of them are like, oh, well, that one's the witch over there. Go see, my friend. They're like, I'm that too. I have that too. Mm-hmm. And I just really want to uplift and ask us to question if reverence can sometimes be complicated by a colonial lens that could also be othering.
Yes.
And then what it does to the sustainability of those who are revered, mm-hmm. and how it makes it not sustainable, for example, to be a midwife. If as a midwife, I'm working with folks who don't know how to soak in their own baths and reintegrate their own spirit and grieve on their own.
Yeah.
And don't believe that they can make their own self a cup of tea that will have healing powers if they presence themselves. Because it is really too much work to ask of one person to heal a whole community or to hold all that energy.
Well, there's this whole meme thread thing that's basically I'm in therapy for people who won't go to therapy. And I think that really resonates here, right? Is that a lot of times it's I'm awakening into my own presence and my own healing path. And then the more I drop into that, the more people are I'm not going to do mine. I'm going to just come and kind of succubus off of yours. And, I know both sides of that coin, right? I know based on how I was raised that I didn't necessarily think that was allowed, that I was allowed to just access my own divinity and my own presence and my own power. And so then it was well, that person's got something. And in the same way I would go to a priest or a preacher, I have to go that way. And it's so liberating. Oh my God, it's the most liberating thing to recognize I have it and everyone around me has it. And the way we can do our work with each other is continuously turning people towards their own power. That's actually been always my favorite part of being a doula is what is your body telling you to do right now? What is your body telling you that you need right now? I'm here to support that, that flow in you and to make it louder, if anything, so this is really, I hope all the listeners are listening, really, the secret mission, I think, of this whole season is for people to recognize you all have pieces of this and we need all of it. So if you were to point to some of the skills of presencing that you wish everyone had in this apocalyptic time, what are a couple of things you would point people towards?
Yeah, thank you. I love that because I do think we need to be specific.
Yes.
Because it is really a very natural place to feel lost or wonder. do I have access to this? Do I have a right to this? That is
Yeah.
an internal narrative that is intentional from the colonial impact, right?
Yep.
And from white supremacy and patriarchy and homophobia.
Yep.
So I was taught by Atava that plant medicine is always around,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always the plant that you need that will be growing nearest you.
Mm.
So sometimes that's a blade of grass.
Yeah.
And I really would start there. I would start by looking around
Mm.
right where you are in the moment, because what might be growing through a crack in the cement outside of your apartment, what might be in the parking lot where you park your car, what might be growing in your neighbor's overgrown, backyard.
Yep.
Those may be allies that are there for a reason. And our plant allies are trying to talk to us.
That is beautiful.
And sometimes they're not who we're wanting to look for.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you who keeps showing up for me right now is yarro. Yarro, it's pronounced different ways, but
Yeah.
yarro. That's boundary medicine.
Yeah.
And is yarrow trying to be like, hey, do you see you need me? You need me.
I'm right
gonna
here.
keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I'm like, wait, where's the Damiana? Where's, these other plants that I think is what I need because it's spring and I'm, feeling alive.
Yes.
Yeah, no, Yarrow's like, you better put some boundaries
get your boundaries
down
on that, baby girl.
And so listening to that, right? What's around us? And if plants don't speak to you, there's going to be other things around you. There might be a spider putting up a web.
Yes.
Spider medicine has a lot of different teachings,
Yes.
but one of the obvious pieces is about weaving.
Yes.
Right? So is there spider medicine around you? Are there mushrooms growing?
Yes.
Is there medicine that's talking to you about mycelium and interconnectedness? Yes. So I would really say that there's not a single one of us who wouldn't be able to look around, even if we only have cracks in cement where we are, and find some teachings of a dandelion.
I love this, Sara. Like, I have to say, last year I was going through a big boundary moment, and wasps came and started building a wasp nest right in front of my front door. And everyone was like, knock it down. You got to knock that down, like, right away. And I was like, I don't feel that energy at all. I feel like they're here to teach me to protect myself. And it was just like, it was so clear that they were there with me. Like, I never felt concerned. I was not scared of them. I was not worried at all. And I was like, they're here for me for this season. And when this season is done, when it gets cold and they're all gone from here, I'll take the wasp nest down. But they're doing me no harm. They're actually doing me, they're helping me out. It was just so clear. And when it got cold, I pulled the wasp nest down and I just tucked it in the house. Just like, I'm really grateful for this energy. And it's still right by the front door, right? So it's like, I just am like, oh, I know why you're here. And I am really grateful for the medicine. I love this. It also is like, I think people use the language now more of like re-indigenization and things like this. And I'm like, for me, what I think of is just like, weave yourself into the world wherever you are. Like, you're living, you're there's this false binary I think that people have in their heads of like, I'm off in nature, or I go to nature and then I come back into not nature or something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's all nature. It's about how you're looking at it. And if you're looking at it, nature is always with you, talking to you, through you, in you, of you. It's all around you, but it's your attention that has to shift. And once your attention shifts, you're like, look at how well I'm being cared for by this place at all times. Look at how abundant the care is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, you just used an alternative word to presencing, which I love the way you just put it. It's attention,
Yes.
right? Where do you bring your attention? That is the practice of presencing,
Yes.
is taking our attention from all of the very intentional distractions.
Yes.
There is a system at work that is intentionally trying to distract us
Exactly.
from knowing ourselves and bringing our presencing back to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really about having such appreciation of our own attention that we're willing to safeguard it and tune it in to that which we care about.
Oh, okay. I really love this. And I can imagine, this just feels so applicable, which is, I really like to think of myself as a practical witch. Like, I'm like, here's what I do. And I do it and it works. And I only want to offer up things that I do and I know that I can vouch for, and I love everything you're offering because I'm like, just try it. Try it and keep trying things. You'll see what works for you. I have a last question for you, which is, I've been in my own healing journey. It feels like for quite some time, but I go through periods where it's more intense and people still expect me to show up and bring my healing energy into the world and into them. And I'm always in this season, I'm finding, not always, but in this season, I'm finding I really want to ask people who do this work all the time, how do you navigate that piece where you have your own inner work, sometimes maybe your own inner falling apart or your own inner confusions or doubts or insecurities, and yet you still have a gift to offer? How do you navigate the both and of that? Are there times when you're like, what I'm dealing with is too much for me to show up in this capacity? Or is it about boundaries?
Mm-hmm. All of the above.
Yeah.
There are times where it would not be of service to the energy that I am called to be giving my presencing to show up if I can't hold the space.
Yeah.
And so it's time to take a day off. It's time to take a week off. It's time to take a month off if that's what's needed. And I have done those things.
Yep.
And will continue to do those things, which is why working within community and taking healers, midwives, witches, brujex folks off of a pedestal is important, so right? Because sometimes I got to tap out and be like, what? I know another great midwife.
Yes.
And that person is going to take really good care of you. And it's my day off.
Yes. Good.
I also, though, can show up at times carrying all the waters that are moving within me. And I think I get a lot of the teachings about how to do that from things I've learned about being a parent, which being a parent is a journey for me that I'm still learning every day. And I hope I continue to get to learn every day. But one of the things I learned early was it wasn't necessarily bad or harmful for my child to see their other parent and myself, like maybe have a disagreement or even for my child and I to have a disagreement or have some sort of a challenge.
Yeah.
Because in fact, the true gift was to let my child see us repair and see us come back together and navigate that there was what my daughter would call a storm, right? I love that. She really thinks of like these challenges as like a storm and storms pass.
That's brilliant. Yes.
Right? Isn't it? I love it. So poetic.
Yeah.
And so in my work as a midwife, I actually think it's a gift to let the folks I'm working with see that there's been a storm.
Yes.
And that I'm in a mode of self-care, healing, repair with boundaries. So I'm not going to necessarily share the backstory.
Yes.
But I might be holding my mug of tea and saying, I didn't get a lot of sleep. I'm so glad to be here with you in this prenatal visit. My family's moving through a lot of things. I'm drinking some Tulsi with honey. It's really helping. And we engage in a prenatal visit and maybe halfway through, hey, I feel like getting up and doing some movement and walking a little bit.
Yes.
do you want to go outside and have a walk with me? Or I'm going to sit on the birth ball too, while you sit on the birth ball, and we're both going to bounce, because I'm in this experience too.
Yes.
And I hope modeling that it's okay to be complex in the moment, that this isn't performative. Healing is not performative. Healing is not going to be the healer is always healed. The healer, in fact, often needs the most healing. Oftentimes we go towards this work.
Exactly.
We go towards it because we need that much healing.
Yes.
So yeah, coming with boundaries that do mean I'm not trying to seek something from the person I'm in a space of holding a container for in that moment, as far as them owing me something or needing to address my needs, but also being able to say, I have needs.
Yes.
I am in a moment
That's right.
in which something's going on. And that to me is about a vulnerability and a letting go of an armoring that then allows them to potentially let go of certain armoring for their own deeper healing.
Ooh, that really resonates. That resonates so much. I mean, I think that there's this way, I think there's this way when I look around at all the people I've been on healing path with, and there was a set of us who had the perfectionist training, who are like, I began this healing path. I've taken 3 steps. And now I'm trying to perfect being a healer already, having taken those 3 steps. And it's not to say that we're not really good at whatever those 3 steps are, but it's like a tip of an iceberg has actually been touched and addressed. And then there's the whole iceberg underneath that still actually needs its ongoing healing work. And I find it so humbling, now when younger people approach me and they're like, I want to do what you do, learn to do what you're doing, whatever, and I laugh because I'm just like, I am still finding my own way of doing what I'm doing. I am writing and I am healing and I am moving energy in the world. And I get more and more confident every day in how to do that. And I'm still figuring it out. And I because I think that's what it is to be human, is to find ways to reintegrate ourselves in the face of systems that have detached us really from ourselves, or trying to constantly detach us from ourselves, to use us like batteries, right? I am reclaiming the energy, the life force of my life. That's actually all I'm doing, and I'm doing it in relationship with others. So it really, you're one of those people for me who I always feel like you turn on all these energetic places within me that I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm going to be integrating that for a while, and reflecting on that and thinking about that, and it'll change me. And so I want to thank you so much for being down to come into this conversation and be in this dance between the work that we're doing. And yeah, I just love you. I just think you're the best in a non-pedestal way.
Thank you, Adrienne. I feel exactly the same in a non-pedestal way. I love you so much, and I appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing in the world. And you're naming that it's a reclamation of your own sacred energy, and the importance of really knowing that, so that you can conserve it and be able to sustain it.
That's it. Now, I know people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, queerception, how do I get down? Like what? So how do people follow up if they're like, I want to know more about your work. Something in what you said feels like path to me. Like, how do you want people to follow up with you?
Yes, great. Well, I really feel like one of the main things that I do believe in is when people reach out, I will respond to you. And I do if somebody says to me, like, I'm excited, I think that that's so vulnerable, and it's such a really important seed. And I'm going to encourage you I will encourage you on your path, because people encouraged me. And so even if folks just don't actually have a solid question or know exactly why something woke up in them, please do reach my way. Because I do want you to feel like you're not alone in this world, and that there are pathways forward for support. So email is the best way, because Queerception is forthcoming with a website and a chat book that will be available online to download, and hopefully also in print.
Yes.
And so email me so that I can get you onto the list of folks who are going to find out about all of that first. Awesome. And the best way to reach Courtney and I is at helloqueerception@gmail.com.
Shake these bones, shake these bones. Oh, I was supposed to read something from Fables and Spells. Yes, this feels right. All right, this is called August 25th, 2020. And it's one of my Black August poems. You are meant to love in spite of everything past. You need to be loved. You are meant for freedom in spite of constant cages. You are still so wild. You are built to hold in spite of the erasure. You're built for worship. You're here to thrive. This is your reclamation. Your orgasmic yes.
Woo!
A little bit of haiku on an afternoon. All right. I love you. Ciao, 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 everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, love. I just adore you. This podcast of ours is produced by the incomparable and incredible Zach Rosen. If you are receiving, good things from this show, feel free to become a patron of the show. It helps us to continue to make the offer without any kind of sponsorship or other economic ties. You can give at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow. We're on Instagram at endoftheworldpc. Thank you so much. Bye.